I'm back, and do we have a lot to talk about. Been under the weather for a couple of weeks, and I can tell you this much. The world did not take a pause. Mr. J.D. Vance put authoritarian globalists on notice. I think I'll eventually do a video on that because it was so epic. But first, we got to talk about this guy. You may not recognize him with this mustache, so let me roll the clip. Yes, that is comedian turned Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelenskyy shaking his moneymaker. Evidently, that shaking cannot generate the money necessary to support a war effort, so he came to the White House hat in hand. Now, I understand, this guy was an entertainer, so that dance was probably some sketch comedy thing or something, so no judgment. He's definitely come a long way since then, now looking less like one of the bosom buddies and more like a side character from The Sopranos. This did not go unnoticed when he was greeted by President Trump. All dressed up. Now, I don't care if you think Trump is the worst president in history. If you can't acknowledge that he's the funniest president in history, you're lying, at least to yourself. Welcome back to Shadow Records. I'm Scott, and this is independent media for the people. Now, based on some recent comments, some viewers seem to be confused. By independent, I mean without a corporate overlord, not without an opinion. Fair? Let's continue. Now, you've probably seen many clips of the spat between Zelenskyy, Trump, and J.D. Vance. Much of the mainstream media is portraying this as an ambush of an unsuspecting hero who's fighting for freedom and democracy. While I would certainly dispute that characterization of Zelenskyy himself, I would also dispute the ambush characterization. I watched the entire meeting, and in my estimation, Trump could not have been more congenial and patient leading up to that moment. I highly recommend you watch the entire meeting. It's about 52 minutes long, but here's a clip that shows what I mean.
Your soldiers have been unbelievably brave. We've given them great equipment, but somebody has to use the equipment. They've been unbelievably brave, and we give them great credit. This was supposed to be over very quickly. And here we are 3 years later. So I give tremendous credit to your generals and your soldiers and yourself in the sense that it's been very hard fighting, very tough fighting. They're great fighters. And you have to be very proud of them from that standpoint. But now we want to get it over with. It's enough, right? We want to get it over with. So it's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to sign the agreement at the conference in the East Room. Somewhat of an exciting moment, but the really exciting moment is when we get when they stop the shooting and we end up with a deal. And I think we're fairly close to getting that, and an honor to have you. And please, I'd like to say something.
Zelenskyy, on the other hand, frequently contradicts the president and repeatedly undermines the very concept of signing a peace deal with Putin. Now, if you watch the channel regularly, you've probably heard me talk about frame control, and Trump is a master at it. But Zelenskyy gives him quite a bit of trouble in this meeting. That's where it gets disrespectful. If you're not here asking for something, that's one thing. But you are here at the White House asking for the president's help and speaking in front of the American media. Now, in this clip, Trump makes a point about the United States spending more than Europe and having no security on the money. Something that is factually true.
And we want to be able also to spend money on other things. We don't want to, this is a tremendous amount of money. And what the Biden administration did was terrible. They were giving money, but he had no security on the money. Europe, as you know, gave much less money, but they had security. It was in the form of a loan. They get their money back, and we didn't. And now, at least we're protected because the American taxpayer has to be protected too.
Zelenskyy basically contradicts the president and, in my opinion, attempts to embarrass him a bit.
We can help Europe because Europe really helped. President Trump said that they made less support, but they have our friends and they are our very supportive partners. They really gave a lot, Mr. President. They did.
They gave a lot, but they gave much less.
No.
Much less.
No. No.
No, not you.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I actually thought Trump showed a lot of restraint here. I already wanted to kick the guy out at this point. It is critically important for Trump to establish the frame that this is a dispute between two reasonable leaders deserving of respect who want peace. That's the only frame in which a peace deal can occur. Throughout this interview, Zelenskyy tries to establish his own frame, that Putin is a killer and a terrorist who can't be trusted under any circumstances. That frame will obviously undermine the entire effort. Let's take a look.
I really count on your strong position to stop Putin, and you said that enough with the war. I think that is very important, Ben, to say these words to Putin at the very beginning of war, because he is a killer and terrorist. But I hope that together we can stop him. But for us, it's very important to, to save our country, our values, our freedom, and democracy, and of course, no compromises with a killer about our territories.
If that's how you feel, don't take the meeting, or at the very least, have that conversation behind closed doors. Again, Trump shows patience and tries to gently regain control of the frame.
I've spoken with President Putin, and I feel very strong. I've known him for a long time, and I feel very strongly that they're very serious about it. And we'll make a deal. And when the deal is made, I don't think we talk about security. Everyone's talking about the other day. All they talked about was security. I said, let me make the deal first. I have to make the deal first. I don't worry about security right now. We have to have a deal, because right now, last week, 2,000 soldiers died on both sides. 2,000, and they're losing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 a week. So as we sit here and we talk, people are getting shot and dying on the battlefield. And, they're not American soldiers, but they're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers, and we want to be able to stop it.
Now, of course, it's not only Zelenskyy who's trying to undermine the effort. The media is doing their level best as well. Here, Trump is responding to a question about whether or not he is aligning too much with Putin. I think he handles it quite well, although this is the question that ultimately leads to that heated argument.
If I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America, and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes.
For the people who like Trump or even love Trump, this is one of the reasons why. He's just so straightforward and honest. He doesn't engage in all the phony virtue signaling so many politicians get into. He's a pragmatist. Now, I've drawn attention to his patience. It's actually J.D. Vance who is the first to lose his, and I can understand why. But it's not directed at Zelenskyy. It's in response to that baiting question about aligning too much with Putin.
I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Again, many in the mainstream media tried to characterize this argument as an ambush. But if you notice, Vance's comment wasn't directed at Zelenskyy at all. Nonetheless, watch how confrontational Zelenskyy's response is.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. During 2014 till 2022, Yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversations, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I mean, he's leaning forward, and this is a direct challenge. You're here asking for our help, our weapons, our money, our power, and you are getting in the face of the Vice President of the United States. Now, some individuals in this country may hate their Vice President, may hate their President, may even hate their country. But if you're at all patriotic, or at least have a modicum of respect for the office, you'll realize that this Eastern Bloc thug is out of line. JD responds.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
This is where Trump finally loses his patience.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
Zelenskyy is basically suggesting that ultimately Putin will threaten the United States. At least that seems to be a fair interpretation. This is an extreme version of the propaganda they're using to try to escalate this war. Usually they suggest that Putin will move on to attack the Baltic states, Poland, and ultimately try to take over all of Eastern Europe, something that is virtually impossible based on Russia's economy and military capability. But if they can get people to believe it, will lead to World War III. That was the final straw, and Trump proceeds to put this dude in his place.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't. You're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
a lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if you didn't have
our military equipment, this war would have been over In 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
that there,
thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers. Listen,
Don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers.
Whether or not you think it's fair, you are in the middle of a shitstorm, and it's not smart to sabotage the efforts of the guy who's trying to hand you a life raft. Now, I got to be honest, I don't like the life raft. I think Steve Bannon is calling it right.
My advice is walk the fuck away. I want to walk away so hard, I'm even prepared to say, okay, maybe we don't even investigate, which I think we have to. But we have to walk away. I don't want their minerals, okay? There's enough minerals in the rest of the world.
We don't need the minerals. They're not worth the trouble. However bad you think Russia is, that does not make Ukraine good. In my estimation, they have extraordinarily corrupt leadership. They overthrew their democratically elected president in 2014. They restrict the press. They jail journalists who criticize the war effort. In fact, one journalist who was covering the conflict on YouTube, Gonzalo Lira, died in a Ukrainian prison for committing just such an offense. If I was living in Ukraine, the shit that I'm saying would probably land me in jail. They ban political opposition parties. They no longer hold elections. They conscript their young men and force them to the front lines. This is not a good representation of a free and democratic society. They are corrupt puppets of Western oligarchs who want to escalate this war. I'll wrap it up there. As always, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the content, please hit that like button. Join in the conversation with a comment. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you know anyone who might appreciate this video, please don't hesitate to share it. Thanks again. See you soon.